Okay, so with type 2, this is the helpful, effusive, giving, and martyring type. They're often called the helper. So the conscious core motivation for the 2 is to be available and helpful to others. Uh, the 2 sees themselves as being helpful and kind and loving and nice, and they need other people to see them like that as well. So we've moved out of the gut center where there's not necessarily that monitoring of what other people think about them. Sometimes they have to be reminded to sometimes to think about how other people are perceiving them because they're just not monitoring that as much. Everyone monitors it to some extent. But the 2s, 3s, and 4s are really aware of it. And they really need people to see them in a certain way. So the 2 needs to be seen as helpful and kind. The unconscious core motivation for the 2 is to be seen as loved and valuable. So really underneath all that, the 2 doesn't see themselves as loved, and they don't see themselves as valuable, and they need the feedback that they are. It's sort of like the concept of like working for your love or having to sing for your dinner kind of thing, where it's like, if I don't do this, then I'm going to lose the love that I want from other people. So it's very, very interesting. The core fear is of being worthless, needy, or inconsequential. And so the 2 really is afraid that they're worthless. They're really afraid that other people are going to see them as needy, and or they're going to see them as inconsequential, like it wouldn't matter if you were here anyway because we just don't notice you in the first place. And that's an awful thought for the 2. The core trigger for the 2 is feeling underappreciated or needy. So the second the 2 feels underappreciated, you're going to get some of the reactive aspects of the 2 where they might come and collect and say, hey, wait a minute, I did this for you, I did this for you, and you don't appreciate it. Or if they feel needy, sometimes you can get sort of a melancholic withdrawal. Remember, 2 has a connection to 4, and they may kind of pull back and get kind of sad, or internally they may feel like that, but they don't see themselves as needy. They're the ones that feel needs, and they're good at it. That's what they're tracking. The 2 is tracking what is needed, and they give it before it's even asked, and they learned how to do this very, very early on. So the tapes for the type 2, so the core message is I am inconsequential and worthless. And they reframe that into I am helpful and needed. So if you're afraid that you're inconsequential and worthless, then you have got to make yourself of consequence in people's life. You have to make sure that you are providing something that they need. So the everyday message becomes I know what people want or need, and I'm good at filling those needs. So the 2 is aware. They're very aware that they are monitoring people's needs and that they're filling people's needs. That is usually very aware for almost all 2s. Now, if they're not familiar with the Enneagram, sometimes they cannot be aware of the extent to which they're doing it or how frequently they're running that sort of thought. But they're always aware, oh, I just knew you wanted some water, so I got you some water. Or I always tell the story of a girl that was in one of my classes when I was in undergrad, and I was looking for a pencil and digging through my bag. It was the first day of class, and I turn around and she's holding a pencil, and I didn't know her at all, but she may or may not have been a 2, but the point is that she was looking for needs to be filled and filled it without being asked, and that's 2. And the interpersonal message becomes, oh, I'd love to help you, I look great, you look great today, is really when the 2 compliment. Sometimes they can be very flattering or complimentary. On one level, what they're doing is wanting you to mirror it back to them. It's sort of giving you what I want. So if the 8 is putting their vulnerability out in somebody else and protecting it out there, the 2 is putting their needs out into the environment and filling those needs out there. So if I give you a hug, I need a hug. And so, or if I tell you you look great, I want somebody to tell me I look great today. And on one level, they have it right. It's giving people we're always just giving ourselves what we need, even in relationship. It does seem to always go back to us, but where the 2 can sort of fall off track is when they start expecting other people to know what they want and what they need, and they start collecting and keeping tabs on what they've given. And then sometimes that last statement, here's what you need, that's just any variation on that is the 2 believing that they know, that pride that comes up with 2, that they know what people need and will fill it anyway. And sometimes there's pride about that because they are good at it, but then they can start giving people things without being asked, and that can become problematic. Leading into that, mothering or fathering behaviors, particularly tending to other people's business, which can seem kind of eightish, where they're controlling other people. It's coming from a different place in the sense that they're attempting to make themselves indispensable to other people. On the low side, you can be looking at someone who's saying, "Well, you could never make it without me. You could never do this without me." And sometimes the two will admit, in coaching sessions or something that, yeah, I really do think that people wouldn't be able to survive without me because I do this and I do this, and they've never done it on their own. I always do it, and so they really do make themselves indispensable. Unsolicited advice is feeling pride about knowing what others need and want. They know kind of how to help people and what would help them best and who they need to talk to or what they need to do to get something done. And so sometimes you can get a two in relationship who will just give advice without being asked. It can be very annoying to people that they're with. And it's an expression of that pride that we're talking about. Emotional displays of sadness or anger. So sometimes the three will kind of erupt and you'll see the emotions. It's a positive type, so you don't get it as much. It's 2, 7, and 9 are all positive types. But what you're getting is an eruption of their own repressed feelings coming to the surface. So remember, the 2 is always taking care of other people and their mind. And so what happens when the emotions, the angry emotions or negative, quote unquote, negative emotions arise, the 2 is finally had enough and they can't hold it anymore, and they just will tell you, I did this and you don't even appreciate it, and et cetera, et cetera. Or sometimes what you can get is that display isn't acceptable, so you'll get a sort of a reframe of it into some sort of histrionic display, or very often they'll get sick, and then it forces people to take care of them or tend to their needs. All of that's an expression of needing someone to notice their needs and fill them because they've been doing it. Martyring or slavish behavior, sometimes they're just constantly working for others, doing things for others. And if you say something like, "Well, just don't do it, let them do it." Well, no, they won't do it. I have to do it. Or, "Oh, they don't know how to do it. I'll just go ahead and do it." Or, "You don't know how to do it. I'll just do it." And what they're doing is just going back to that sense of needing to be indispensable. And they need to feel worthy. They need to feel like, and this goes to point 5, the busy work or busybody behavior. It's like, I've got to work to make people love me. I've got to do I got to work for my dinner. I got to sing for my dinner. And it's that sort of thinking that makes them sort of constantly moving and doing for others, which 2s are often doing. 2s are often very militant. So point 6, militant schedule keeping. There's a desire to exert will over the physical world. 2s are very willful, and so they can sort of exert themselves in a lot of different ways to show that, hey, I can control things. I my will or no will. And so it can look 8ish, and a lot of the early descriptions of 2s didn't talk about this militant behavior, where they can be pretty hard and they can sort of be good at getting things done and keeping people on schedule, and they know that. Obviously, the collecting on past debts or deeds is just being fed up at giving to others and needing to be recognized for that. It's sort of like, okay, it's time to collect, here's your bill. And you'll get that with 2s at some point, which is different than 9, because the 9 has got to sort of erase themselves while they're giving, whereas the 2 can't. They just can't erase themselves. They wish they could, but they remember themselves, and at some point they need it filled. And spontaneous gift giving bolsters the sense of being a giving, loving, or loving person, or thinking of others. So they're really trying to make sure that other people recognize that. It's a way. The healthy 2, they learn how to give without expecting anything in return. There's no strings. But average to lower average 2s just, they need you to say, "Oh God, you're so helpful. I really appreciate that, and I can't believe you were thinking of me." And remember, it goes back to being an image type and needing to have that reinforced.